Rain fell lazily over Manhattan, blurring the city lights into pale streaks of gold and gray. Inside his loft, Benjamin Hart sat by the window, stirring a cup of green tea he'd long forgotten to drink. The night was quiet, too quiet for New York. Only the ticking of the old clock and the hum of distant traffic broke the silence. A soft knock at the door pulled him out of his thoughts. He wasn't expecting anyone. When he opened it, no one was there, only a small, weathered envelope on the floor, edges damp from the rain. No return address. Just his name, Benjamin Hart, written in neat, almost obsessive handwriting. He took it to his desk, turned on the lamp, and slid it open. Inside was a single brass key, slightly tarnished, with the number 507 engraved on it. Alongside it, a folded note, no greeting, no signature. Just 7 words. She's not dead. Check room 507. For a long moment, he didn't move. The message was impossible. The name it stirred in his mind hadn't been spoken in years, Emily Reed. 3 years ago, the disappearance of Emily, daughter of media tycoon Richard Reed, had shaken the city. She vanished on the eve of her wedding, last seen at the luxurious Winterfall Hotel on the Upper West Side. The police found her blood on the sheets, her phone in the bathtub, and a broken engagement ring by the window. They declared her dead after 6 months of fruitless searching. But no body was ever recovered. Hart hadn't worked that case officially, though he remembered the chaos, the press, the speculation. He also remembered something else, the uneasy feeling that the case had ended too cleanly. Now, years later, someone wanted him to reopen it. He leaned back in his chair, twirling the key between his fingers. It was heavy, old-fashioned, like the kind hotels used before electronic locks took over. On the back, faintly scratched by hand, were 2 initials, ER. Benjamin smirked faintly. "You always did love theatrics, Emily," he murmured to no one. The Winterfall Hotel had been shut down for nearly 2 years, officially for renovation, though rumor had it the building's owner had gone bankrupt. That made the note even stranger. Someone had gone through the trouble of finding him, delivering this letter, and luring him to a place that technically no longer existed. He stood, buttoned his dark coat, and slipped the key into his pocket. The rain outside had grown heavier, drumming against the glass. He reached for his umbrella, then hesitated, glancing once more at the note. "She's not dead." Words like that could mean many things. Maybe a cruel joke. Maybe a desperate plea. Or maybe, just maybe, the truth. Hart extinguished the lights in his apartment. As he descended the stairwell, his reflection followed him in the dim mirrors, tall, broad-shouldered, composed, yet with eyes that carried the quiet weight of too many secrets. The doorman barely looked up when he passed. Outside, the city seemed to breathe around him, neon lights flickering, sirens fading into the wet distance. He hailed a cab. "Winterfall Hotel," he said. The driver frowned in the mirror. "That place? Thought it's been closed for years." Benjamin smiled faintly. "So did I." The cab rolled into the night, tires hissing through puddles. Somewhere behind the fogged glass, New York watched and whispered, as if the city itself knew that something long buried was about to rise again. The cab stopped at the edge of the Upper West Side, where the streets grew darker and quieter. The Winterfall Hotel stood at the corner of Lexington and 74th like a forgotten monument, its grand marble facade now cracked and discolored by years of neglect. The name above the entrance was half-lit, a few flickering bulbs barely spelling winter. The rest had gone dark. Benjamin stepped out into the drizzle, the rain tapping against his umbrella like slow applause. The air carried the smell of dust, wet stone, and something faintly metallic, the scent of memory itself. He moved closer, brushing a hand across the brass door handle. To his surprise, it turned without resistance. The door creaked open, releasing a draft of cold air that smelled of old carpets and silence. Inside, the lobby stretched before him in elegant decay. Chandeliers hung like frozen tears from the ceiling, their crystals dull beneath layers of dust. The grand piano near the fireplace sat closed, but one key, the middle C, was spotless, as if someone had touched it recently. His steps echoed through the vast emptiness. The sound felt too loud, intrusive, almost disrespectful to the stillness that had claimed the place. He noticed traces of movement, faint footprints in the dust near the reception desk, a chair slightly pulled out, a matchbook lying on the counter. He picked it up. The Velvet Room, printed in silver letters, a jazz club that had closed down last year. Interesting, he murmured. Behind the counter, an old guest book lay open. The ink had faded, but the last entry caught his eye. Read, room 507. Check in, June 20th, 2022. Check out. The dash was long, confident. Final. Hard exhaled slowly and closed the book. He moved toward the elevator, but it was dead, doors half open, cables hanging limp. Instead, he took the stairs. The building groaned with each of his steps, like something asleep and unwilling to wake. By the time he reached the 5th floor, the air had grown heavier, colder. Dust hung thick, and his breath came out in mist. The corridor stretched endlessly, lined with peeling wallpaper and doors that all looked the same. Yet one door stood out, 507. The brass number was polished, untouched by time. He reached into his pocket, took out the key, and hesitated. Somewhere in the distance, a faint note of piano music drifted through the hall. It was delicate, almost sorrowful, a few bars of Chopin's Nocturne in E minor. He turned the key. The door opened without a sound. Inside, the room was surprisingly well preserved. Curtains drawn, a single lamp glowing dimly on the nightstand, casting golden light across the bed. On the table, a fresh cup of coffee, still steaming. His heartbeat slowed, but his thoughts quickened. Someone had been here. Recently. He scanned the space, the bed neatly made, the air faintly perfumed, the carpet free of dust. A piano stood near the corner, a small upright model, not the grand one from the lobby. Its lid was open, and just like downstairs, one key gleamed clean amidst the dust. He stepped closer. Resting on the piano bench was a small silver locket. Inside, a photo of Emily Reed. She was smiling faintly, eyes full of life. But something in the picture felt wrong. The background. It wasn't from her old apartment or her father's estate. It was this room. Benjamin closed the locket and set it down. His reflection wavered in the piano's lacquered surface, eyes steady, expression unreadable. Then he noticed it, faint writing on the mirror above the dresser, drawn in lipstick. "You're looking the wrong way." He turned sharply. The door was still open. The hallway empty. Silence pressed in around him. For a long moment, he stood perfectly still, listening. The faintest trace of perfume lingered in the air, jasmine and smoke. Then, somewhere far below, a single piano note rang out, soft but clear. Hard exhaled through his nose. "All right, Emily," he whispered. "Let's see what game you're playing this time." He reached into his coat, pulled out a small notepad, and jotted a single line. 507, not abandoned. "Someone wants me here." Then he pocketed the key again, sat on the edge of the bed, and waited. Outside, the city's rain faded to a drizzle, and the Winterfall Hotel listened, as if it had just taken its first breath in years. Benjamin didn't sleep that night. He sat by the window of room 507, watching the rain draw faint silver lines across the glass. Every creak of the old hotel seemed deliberate, like the building itself was whispering secrets through the pipes. At 2:17 a.m., the lamp flickered once and went out. The city's glow barely reached this part of the street. In the dimness, Hard could make out his own reflection in the mirror, and for a fraction of a second, he thought he saw someone standing behind him. He turned sharply. Nothing. Only the empty chair, the piano, and that damned steaming cup of coffee, now gone cold. He smiled to himself. If you're trying to scare me, he muttered into the dark, you'll have to try harder. The next morning, he began his usual methodical work. First, the evidence. The footprints in the dust, the coffee residue, a faint fingerprint on the mirror's corner. Second, the witnesses, if any existed. The front desk downstairs was as lifeless as the rest of the building. But he noticed something new, a security camera above the lobby door, the kind used for private surveillance. It was still running, the tiny red light blinked once every few seconds. He followed the cable down a narrow service corridor to a locked maintenance room. The door was sealed with tape marked, "Property of NYPD." Curious. He pulled out a small pocket tool and popped the latch. Inside, a faint smell of ozone and mildew. Dusty monitors lined the wall, most screens black, one still faintly glowing with static. He brushed it clean. A playback feed appeared, Winterfall Lobby, 2:17 a.m. He watched. The camera showed the front entrance. Nothing moved for several seconds. Then, a flicker of motion. A woman, half hidden by the doorframe, stepping inside. Long dark hair. Slim silhouette. Wearing white. Emily. She paused in the middle of the lobby, staring directly at the camera. Then she smiled, a strange, knowing smile, and walked out of frame toward the elevator. The timestamp showed the same moment Benjamin had been sitting upstairs, staring at his reflection. He rewound and replayed it 3 times, each slower than before. The video glitched slightly when she looked up, like the frame itself didn't want him to see her face clearly. A cold realization crawled through his chest. Someone had been here last night. And she had known exactly where to find him. He copied the footage onto a small drive he carried for cases, then checked the rest of the feeds. Most were dead, but one from the rear service door caught his attention. It showed someone else entering the building earlier that evening, tall, wearing a hooded coat, carrying a briefcase. The person never appeared leaving. He turned off the monitors, pocketed the drive, and headed back upstairs. The corridor on the 5th floor felt different now, quieter, heavier. Dust motes drifted in the air like ash. When he reached 507, he saw that the door, which he'd locked, was slightly open. He pushed it gently. The piano lid was now closed. The coffee cup gone. The lipstick message on the mirror, wiped clean. Only a faint smear of red remained, like a wound. Benjamin's jaw tightened. "You're good," he said softly. "But not perfect." He checked his watch, 9:12 a.m. Someone had entered and cleaned up everything in less than 6 hours. He began to sweep the room again, inch by inch. Beneath the bed, dust, scraps of paper, a single old coin. Behind the curtain, nothing. Then his hand brushed against a vent cover. Loose. He removed it carefully. Inside was a small folded piece of paper. 2 words written in neat cursive. Don't trust them. No signature. No clue who they were. He sat back, turning the note over in his hands. The handwriting didn't match the first letter he'd received. Someone else had left this one. The silence pressed close again. The hotel seemed to breathe, like something alive. Somewhere below, a soft metallic sound echoed, a door closing. Hard pocketed the note and stepped into the hallway. He looked both ways. Empty. Still, the faintest whisper brushed his ear, too quiet to be real. Leave while you can. He froze. Every instinct screamed to draw his gun, but he didn't. He simply smiled, that same sharp, sarcastic smile that unnerved criminals and cops alike. Not yet, he whispered back. As he walked toward the stairs, the piano behind him struck a single note, middle C, loud and sudden, as if the building itself had been waiting for his reply. He didn't look back. By the time Benjamin left the Winterfall Hotel, the sun was crawling over the skyline like a pale ghost. The rain had stopped, but the air carried that heavy, metallic chill that New York always wore after a storm. He took a cab downtown, to a part of the city that never slept, though the man he was going to see hadn't had much rest in years. Richard Reed lived in a penthouse overlooking Central Park. His building was all glass and silence, guarded by men who looked more like soldiers than doormen. Benjamin showed his card, waited for the security check, and rode the elevator up 50 floors in complete stillness. The doors opened to a world of immaculate order. White marble floors, abstract art, the faint scent of whiskey and money. Richard Reed stood by the window, hands in his pockets, staring at the city below. Even from behind, Benjamin could see the weight of age on his broad shoulders. "Mr. Reed," Benjamin said. The man turned slowly. His hair was silver now, his once famous journalist's eyes dimmed by years of loss. But when he spoke, his voice still had authority. "I wondered when someone like you would come knocking," he said. "Or did she send you herself?" Benjamin raised an eyebrow. "That depends on who she is." Reed smiled faintly. "Emily, of course. Who else?" He gestured toward a chair. Benjamin sat, crossing one leg over the other. The room felt like a museum of a life interrupted, photos of Emily everywhere, trophies, newspaper clippings about her engagement to a young tech heir. "I assume you know the official story," Reed said, pouring himself a drink. "She disappeared. Blood on the bed. No body. No closure." "I remember," Benjamin replied. "But you don't believe she's dead?" The older man's hand trembled just slightly as he set down his glass. "A father knows when his child is gone, Mr. Hard. And he knows when someone wants him to believe she is." Benjamin studied him quietly. "You said someone, you think her death was staged?" Reed's jaw tightened. "Not think. No. Emily was different, near the end. Nervous. Afraid of people around her. She said things, strange things. That they were watching her, making her do things she didn't remember." Benjamin leaned forward. "Who were they?" Reed looked toward the window again, as if expecting someone to be listening. "Her fiancé, for one. Maybe his associates. They had ties to a research firm, psychological studies, human behavior, brain mapping. She said they wanted to test something on her. I told her to come home. The next day, she vanished." He walked to his desk and opened a drawer, taking out an old flash drive. "I found this in her apartment after she disappeared. Never showed it to the police. They were too busy chasing rumors." He handed it to Benjamin. "Maybe you'll see what I couldn't." Benjamin turned the drive over in his palm. "Why now? Why call me?" "I didn't," Reed said flatly. The detective looked up. "You didn't send me the key." "No," Reed's voice dropped to a whisper. "Someone wants you in that hotel, Mr. Hard. I suggest you ask yourself why." Silence filled the room. The ticking of the antique clock grew louder, almost intrusive. Benjamin rose. "If what you're saying is true, Emily might have uncovered something bigger than a broken engagement." Reed nodded slowly. "Then find her, Benjamin. Not the myth, not the photograph, the truth." As he turned to leave, Reed's voice followed him. "One more thing. I've seen her." Benjamin stopped. "When?" "Last year." In a reflection. Reed smiled weakly. "It was on the window of this very room. For a second, she was there, smiling at me. Then gone. Maybe grief. Maybe guilt. Or maybe she wanted me to know she's still watching." Benjamin didn't respond. He simply tucked the flash drive into his coat pocket and walked out. The elevator ride down felt longer than usual. When he stepped outside, the city noise swallowed him again, horns, footsteps, the pulse of life. He took out his phone and connected the drive through an adapter. The folder contained 3 short video files. The first 2 were corrupted. The third opened after a brief static. The screen showed Emily, sitting in a dimly lit room, whispering into the camera. Her voice shook. "If you're seeing this, I'm already gone. They made me sign things. Made me forget. But I remember the music. I remember the mirror. They're using people, Ben. Don't trust." The feed cut off. Benjamin stared at the screen until it went black. Then he whispered, almost to himself, "You always loved riddles, Emily." He slipped the phone back into his pocket, stepped to the curb, and hailed another cab. "Where to?" the driver asked. Benjamin looked out at the skyline, and toward the faint silhouette of the Winterfall Hotel in the distance. "Back to where it started," he said. Room 507. The Winterfall Hotel was even quieter that night. The city's pulse seemed to stop at its doors, leaving only the whisper of wind and the distant hum of rain against cracked windows. Benjamin pushed the heavy doors open and stepped into the lobby once again, the beam of his flashlight cutting through the dust and darkness. The grand piano still stood near the fireplace, its lid half open like a mouth caught mid-breath. He ran his fingers over the keys, cold, untouched, until he reached the spotless middle C. Someone had cleaned it again. Recently. He took out his phone, inserted Richard Reed's flash drive, and opened the corrupted files. Static danced across the screen, faint voices layered beneath the noise. One phrase repeated again and again, almost like a whisper inside his ear. "They're watching." The sound cut abruptly. Then, silence. And then, faintly, music. The same piano melody he'd heard that first night. Chopin's Nocturne in E minor. But this time, it wasn't a recording. The music was coming from upstairs. Benjamin followed the sound up the spiral staircase, each step groaning under his weight. The melody drifted down like fog, slow and haunting, echoing through the hall. When he reached the 5th floor, it grew clearer, coming from room 511, 2 doors away from 507. He placed his hand on the handle. It turned easily. Inside, a single candle burned on the piano. A woman sat before it, her back to him, hair dark and slightly curled, wearing a simple white dress. Her fingers moved gracefully across the keys, each note trembling with emotion. For a moment, Benjamin said nothing. The resemblance hit him like a cold wave, same posture, same delicate movements. It was Emily. Or someone who wanted him to think it was. "Emily," he said softly. The woman froze. Her hands stopped mid-note. Slowly, she turned her head. The candlelight flickered across her face. She was beautiful, yes, but older, sharper, haunted. The eyes were the same color as Emily's, but colder. Wiser. "You shouldn't be here," she said quietly. Benjamin took a cautious step closer. "Then why play her music?" "It helps me remember," she whispered. "Or forget. Depends on the night." He studied her closely. "Who are you?" Her lips curved into a faint smile. "Someone who used to be her." He frowned. "Used to?" She looked at the piano keys, running her fingers along the edge. Emily Reed was a story. A performance. They wanted a perfect daughter, a perfect bride. I played my part. Until the night I stopped. Benjamin took another step forward. "Then where is she now?" The woman's eyes lifted to meet his. For a heartbeat, they glimmered with fear, or guilt. "Maybe she's still playing. Somewhere else." He reached into his coat, pulling out the locket he'd found in room 507. This was hers. Found it upstairs. Her gaze hardened. "You shouldn't have touched that." "I touch what I need to understand," he said calmly. "And I understand one thing, you're lying." The candle flickered violently, shadows rippling across the walls. For an instant, her reflection in the piano's glossy surface didn't match her movements. One side turned her head, the other stayed still. Benjamin's hand instinctively moved toward his pocket, where he kept his small revolver. "What's going on here?" She stood up, slow and deliberate. "You think the truth is a single thing, Mr. Hard. That's your weakness. Try me." She smiled faintly. "The truth is layered. And some layers aren't meant to be peeled." Before he could speak again, the lights flickered. The piano struck a discordant note by itself. When he turned back, she was gone. The chair still swayed slightly, as if someone had just stood up. The candle sputtered, then died. Darkness swallowed the room. Benjamin switched on his flashlight, sweeping it across the space. The floor was covered in a thin layer of dust, except for one line of footprints leading toward the balcony. The door was open, rain blowing in from outside. He stepped forward carefully, scanning the fire escape below. Nothing but shadows and water. Whoever she was, she'd vanished into the night. He looked back toward the piano. One key gleamed clean, the same middle C. Next to it, a folded slip of paper. He unfolded it slowly. 5 words, written in neat cursive. "She remembers you, Benjamin Hard." His pulse quickened. He read the note again, slower this time. Then he smiled faintly and tucked it into his coat. "Good," he murmured. "I was starting to miss her." As he turned to leave, he noticed something carved faintly into the wooden frame of the mirror above the piano, barely visible in the dying candlelight. 507 hides the past. 511 hides the truth. He pocketed the note, glanced once more at the empty chair, and walked back into the corridor. Behind him, the piano began to play again, softly, perfectly, on its own. Benjamin returned to room 507 as the city's lights began to flicker through the rain-streaked windows. The corridor was empty, silent, almost expectant, as if the hotel itself waited for him to uncover the next secret. He closed the door behind him and let the dim light of his flashlight sweep across the room. The bed was untouched. The coffee cup was gone, no sign it had ever existed. Only the piano remained, closed now, its single gleaming key a silent witness to some unseen presence. His eyes fell on the mirror above the dresser. Something had been written there before, in lipstick, "You're looking the wrong way." But now it was clean, pristine. Yet, a faint outline caught his attention, almost imperceptible, scratches beneath the glass, forming a small symbol he didn't immediately recognize. He knelt down and pressed gently against the bottom corner of the frame. To his surprise, it shifted, revealing a narrow cavity behind the mirror. A hidden compartment, dust-covered, untouched for years. Carefully, he reached inside and retrieved its contents, a small bundle wrapped in yellowed paper. Inside, there were photographs, old letters, and a delicate bracelet with the initials ER engraved. He examined the letters first. Most were addressed to someone named M, written in a careful, almost obsessive hand. But one envelope stood out, it bore Benjamin's own name. The date, however, made him freeze, 3 days in the future. Hands steady despite the shock, he opened it. The paper inside was thin, almost translucent. Written in the same neat cursive as the note from the piano room. "Benjamin, if you are reading this, do not trust what you see. Room 507 is only the beginning. The answers lie where the music hides. Time is not what you think. E." Benjamin sat back slowly, the paper trembling slightly in his fingers. The handwriting was unmistakably Emily's, or someone who wanted him to believe it was hers. But the date was impossible. How could someone send him a letter from the future? He leaned against the dresser, processing the information. The bracelet felt cold in his hand, almost like it was infused with some secret. He slid it onto his wrist. It fit perfectly, as if it had been waiting for him all these years. The photographs were old, Emily in her childhood, Emily at her last birthday party, Emily in the hotel lobby 3 years ago. Each image carried a subtle message, a hidden clue to the puzzle he had been chasing. One photo in particular made him pause, Emily sitting at the piano, the same piano in room 511, fingers hovering over the middle C. The background was strange, the room looked exactly like 507, but the calendar on the wall read June 20th, 2025. Benjamin frowned. Time seemed to be bending around this case. Layers of reality and memory were overlapping. Whoever had left these items behind wanted him to think in a way that defied reason. He closed the hidden compartment and stepped back. The mirror now reflected only him, or so it seemed. He moved closer, pressing his hand against the glass again. This time, the reflection shifted slightly, showing not the room behind him, but a corridor he didn't recognize, dimly lit, stretching endlessly into shadow. A soft whisper echoed, barely audible. "Find the truth before it finds you." Benjamin's pulse quickened. He pocketed the letters and photographs, tucking the bracelet carefully under his coat. He glanced at the piano, the gleaming key catching the faint light. The room was still, but the air felt alive, as if holding its breath. He knew, without a doubt, that the next steps would lead him deeper into a labyrinth of deception, shadows, and secrets. Someone, or something, was guiding him, manipulating him. But who? And to what end? Benjamin Hart adjusted his coat and took a deep breath. The Winterfall Hotel was no longer just a building. It had become a puzzle, a stage for a story that refused to stay buried. And he was right at the center of it. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets of Manhattan slick and glistening under the dim glow of streetlights. Benjamin Hart moved silently through the alley behind the Winterfall Hotel, his coat collar turned up against the chill. The city around him hummed with life, but he felt detached, as if moving through a world that no longer belonged to him. He reached the fire escape at the back of the hotel and climbed to the 5th floor. The corridor was quieter than ever, the air thick with dust and an unplaceable scent of jasmine and old wood. He stopped in front of room 507, key in hand. Something tugged at the back of his mind, an intuition, sharp and insistent, that tonight would reveal something vital. Before he could turn the key, a shadow moved across the far end of the hall. He froze. A woman stood there, motionless. Her silhouette was unmistakable, tall, slim, with long dark hair, wearing a white dress that fluttered slightly in the breeze from the broken windows. Benjamin's heart skipped. He had seen her before, or someone who looked exactly like her. The resemblance to Emily Reed was uncanny, unervingly precise. "Who are you?" he asked, keeping his voice calm, measured. The woman tilted her head, eyes gleaming in the dim light. "You shouldn't be here, Mr. Hart." Benjamin studied her closely. "I think I already know that. But the question is, who are you?" Her lips curved into a faint, enigmatic smile. "I could ask you the same thing. You've been following shadows for 3 years, and yet, you still don't see the whole picture." He took a cautious step forward. "I see enough to know you're lying." "Lying is a matter of perspective," she said softly. Her gaze flicked toward room 507. "Emily Reed is gone. She's been gone a long time. What you think you're chasing, her, was never her at all." Benjamin frowned. "Then who are you?" She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she turned and walked a few steps toward the balcony, letting the soft night air stir her dress. "I was asked to play a role," she said finally, voice almost a whisper. "To be someone else. To live a story not my own. I'm her reflection, her echo, her doppelgänger." Benjamin's mind raced. The letters, the flash drive, the hidden compartment, all of it had led to this moment. And why now? Why show yourself? "Because the game has changed," she replied, turning back to him. Her face was half shadow, half light, expression unreadable. "The people who orchestrated everything, they underestimated you. They thought you would quit. They thought you would stop before you saw the truth. He stepped closer. And what is the truth? She shook her head slowly. The truth is, layered. There are things you cannot yet understand. Emily is not a victim, not entirely. She is, someone they wanted to erase, someone they tried to replace. I am what remains visible. She is what hides in the shadows. Benjamin exhaled, keeping his tone even. Then lead me to her. Or tell me where she went. The woman studied him for a long moment. Then she smiled faintly, almost regretfully. I cannot. Not yet. The past has claws, Mr. Hard. It reaches into the present. It will follow you everywhere. Before he could respond, she turned and walked toward the stairwell. Her steps were light, deliberate. Follow if you dare, she said over her shoulder. Benjamin watched her go, every muscle tense. His instincts screamed caution, but something deeper urged him forward. He approached room 507, the key now feeling heavier in his hand. He paused, looking back at the empty corridor. The reflection of the woman lingered in his mind, her eyes, her smile, the ghost of Emily Reed staring back at him. And then he realized something. Whoever she was only part of the puzzle. The real danger, and perhaps the real truth, remained hidden somewhere deeper, beyond the piano keys, beyond the mirrors, beyond the letters and the fire escapes. Benjamin stepped into room 507, closing the door behind him. The quiet of the hotel pressed around him, heavier than ever. Somewhere, far below, a piano struck a single, resonant note. He didn't flinch. He had a feeling this was just the beginning. The fifth-floor corridor seemed to stretch endlessly as Benjamin moved toward the fire escape at the end. Each step echoed in the abandoned hotel, mixing with the faint sound of water dripping somewhere deep inside. The woman, the doppelgänger, had disappeared, leaving only a whisper of perfume and a lingering sense of unease. He paused at a door partially hidden behind a tattered curtain. It was unmarked, almost invisible, and its handle felt unusually warm, as if someone had touched it recently. His instincts, honed over decades of cases, screamed that this door mattered. He turned the key from his pocket, a simple brass key he had picked up from the mysterious envelope weeks ago, and pushed. The door creaked, revealing a narrow staircase leading down into darkness. Benjamin took a deep breath and descended. The air grew cooler, damper, and carried a metallic tang. The walls were bare concrete, the only light coming from his flashlight. At the bottom, he found a heavy steel door with a keypad. Someone had clearly been here, and not long ago. He examined the panel. It looked old but functional. Numbers scratched faintly on the metal suggested frequent use. He pressed a sequence he had memorized from a note tucked inside the piano room's locket. The lock clicked. The door swung open, revealing a small room unlike anything else in the abandoned hotel. Monitors lined the walls, some flickering with static, others showing recorded footage of empty corridors. Tables were scattered with papers, notebooks, and electronic devices. On one desk lay a pile of files labeled Winterfall Project, Human Behavioral Studies. Benjamin's eyes narrowed. He flipped open a folder. Inside were detailed notes on various subjects, hotel staff, visitors, and most alarmingly, Emily Reed herself. Observations on sleep patterns, emotional reactions, responses to stimuli. Some pages contained strange diagrams linking personality traits to behavior, memory recall, and emotional control. He picked up a single sheet of paper, scanning it quickly. The handwriting was neat, precise, scientific, clinical. It described experiments involving controlled stress, sensory deprivation, and guided memory alteration. The date on the page, 6 months before Emily disappeared. A chill ran down his spine. They weren't just watching her, they were conditioning her. His gaze shifted across the room. On a shelf, a small stack of photographs caught his attention. One was recent, Emily, alive, unaware she had been photographed, sitting at a cafe in Brooklyn. Another showed a figure in a white dress, walking through Winterfall's hallways. It was her doppelgänger. Benjamin felt a mixture of awe and anger. Whoever had orchestrated this had created layers of deception, manipulating the truth, and ensuring that he was drawn into it. He turned toward the monitors, flicking through the footage. One screen displayed a date from last month. A woman, Emily or someone posing as her, was walking through the hotel, checking the rooms, pausing at 507, then disappearing into the basement staircase. The figure moved confidently, deliberately, aware that someone could be watching. Benjamin exhaled, rubbing his temples. So, the hotel itself is part of the experiment, and I'm the new variable. His hand brushed against a loose panel on the far wall. He pried it open, revealing a narrow passage leading deeper into shadow. Inside, he found more documents, contracts, psychological evaluations, and a small recorder. On it, a single label, Emily, subject 507. He pressed play. A voice filled the room, soft, trembling, unmistakable. They said I was gone, but I remember everything. Benjamin, they're still watching. They know you're here. Trust no one. Benjamin paused the tape, the weight of the words settling in his mind. Every instinct told him that the game had just escalated. The experiment, the hotel, the doppelgänger, it was all a web, and he had just stepped into the center. He looked around the hidden room one last time. Every shadow, every monitor, every file screamed danger. But he knew one thing, he couldn't turn back. Not now. The Winterfall Hotel had more secrets than he could imagine, and each step forward would reveal something darker, more intricate, more dangerous. Benjamin Hart adjusted his coat, pocketed the files he could carry, and headed back up the stairs. The hotel waited, silent and patient, as if breathing in anticipation of what was to come. The corridors of the Winterfall Hotel were eerily quiet as Benjamin made his way back to room 507. Each step echoed like a drumbeat, and the distant hum of the city seemed to vanish entirely. The hidden room beneath the hotel had revealed enough to show him that this case was far bigger than he had ever imagined, but it had also made something painfully clear: Emily Reed was alive. He entered 507, placing the files and recorder on the bed. The room smelled faintly of jasmine and old wood, the same scent that had lingered after the doppelgänger had vanished. For a moment, he simply stood, listening, letting the hotel breathe around him. Then he heard it, a soft, deliberate knock at the door. He tensed, hand resting near his pocket. "Who's there?" he called, voice steady. "Benjamin," a familiar voice whispered. Soft, calm, unmistakable. His heart skipped. He stepped forward and opened the door. Standing there was Emily herself. Not the doppelgänger, not a reflection, not a ghost, Emily. Her hair fell softly around her shoulders, her eyes wary but alive, sharper than any memory he had. She looked older, stronger, shaped by years of fear and hiding. "Emily," he breathed, taking a cautious step forward. "I didn't want you to find me like this," she said. "Not yet." Benjamin studied her closely. "Why? After all this time, why now?" She shook her head, a mixture of sorrow and defiance in her gaze. "Because they know you're here. They know I reached out. I had to trust someone. I had to trust you." He frowned. "Trust me with what?" Emily stepped inside, closing the door behind her. "With the truth. Everything you've seen, the hotel, the doppelgänger, the hidden rooms, it was all part of an experiment. They wanted to erase me, Benjamin, to make me compliant, to manipulate my memories. But I resisted." Benjamin's eyes narrowed. "Who are they?" She took a deep breath. "A research firm, private and powerful. They studied human behavior, controlling people like pieces on a board. My father, my fiancé, even some of the staff, they were all involved, willingly or not. They wanted to use me to test the limits of memory, fear, obedience. Benjamin ran a hand through his hair. And the doppelgänger? She was planted, Emily said softly. To mislead you, to misdirect anyone who got close. To make the truth harder to find. He took a step closer. Then why now? Why appear to me? Because I can't fight them alone anymore, she said, voice trembling. I need someone I can trust, someone who can see the pieces that I can't. Benjamin, you're the only one who can help me stop them. A silence fell between them, thick with the weight of years, secrets, and danger. Outside, the city continued its endless rhythm, oblivious to the quiet storm brewing inside the hotel. Benjamin finally spoke. All right. Tell me everything. From the beginning. Emily nodded, taking a seat by the window. It began 3 years ago, with my disappearance. They forced me to participate in experiments, sleep manipulation, memory alteration, controlled stress. They wanted to erase my identity, create a blank slate. But I learned to hide, to resist. I used the hotel as my cover, moving between rooms, leaving clues, guiding anyone who could follow. I never expected you would come, but you always had a knack for seeing what others missed. Benjamin listened intently, letting each word sink in. And the letters, the piano, the mirror, it was all you. Partially, she admitted. Some of it was me. Some of it was them, testing your reactions. Every note, every shadow, every message, they were experiments. But I also left true clues, hoping you'd understand them. Benjamin exhaled slowly. Then the final piece, the hidden room, the files. Emily looked away, toward the floor. That's where the full truth lies. They thought I would never reveal it. But now, we can finish this. Together. Benjamin's expression hardened. He felt the familiar thrill of a case taking shape, the puzzle finally within reach. Danger was imminent, yes, but so was clarity. He extended his hand. Then let's stop them. Emily took it, her grip firm. Her eyes met his, steady and unwavering. For the first time in years, she was free from shadows, from fear. Outside, the Winterfall Hotel seemed to hold its breath. Inside, a quiet alliance had formed, 2 minds, 2 lives, converging to uncover the truth and face whatever came next. Benjamin Hart straightened his coat, adjusted his stance, and whispered, almost to himself, the end of the game is near. And I always finish my games. The night air was thick with tension as Benjamin and Emily moved carefully through the hidden corridors beneath the Winterfall Hotel. Every shadow seemed alive, every sound amplified, the distant drip of water, the creak of old beams, the faint hum of electricity through the monitors lining the walls. Benjamin held the flash drive tightly in his hand. Emily's grip was firm on his arm, grounding him. They had retraced the paths, followed the clues, uncovered the experiments, and now stood on the edge of the truth. The files, the hidden rooms, the doppelgänger, all pointed to the same conclusion: the people behind this were powerful, patient, and ruthless. They entered the largest room they had found in the basement, a makeshift lab filled with monitors, recording devices, and stacks of notes. The screens flickered to life, displaying footage from multiple cameras. There, in the center of the room, sat the final piece of the puzzle, a man in a dark suit, orchestrating the experiments, manipulating every movement, every message, every deception. Benjamin recognized him immediately. It was one of the lead scientists from the Winterfall project. The man looked up from the monitors, as if he knew they had arrived, and a slow, sinister smile spread across his face. "So, you found me," the man said. His voice was calm, measured, but carried an undercurrent of menace. "I wondered how long it would take." Benjamin stepped forward, voice steady. "It's over. Your games, your experiments, they end tonight." The scientist shook his head. "End? You misunderstand. This was never just about Emily. It's about testing limits, understanding control, seeing how far the mind can be pushed. You think you've uncovered the truth, but you've only scratched the surface. Emily took a step forward, eyes blazing. You violated her life. You violated countless others. This ends now. The man's smile faltered slightly. You think one person can stop what we've built? Benjamin's gaze hardened. I don't need to stop it all. I just need to stop you. The tension was almost tangible. Every monitor, every piece of equipment, every shadow seemed to lean toward them. Benjamin activated the flash drive, uploading the incriminating files to a secure server, ensuring the evidence would reach the authorities, journalists, and the people who could dismantle the project. The scientist's eyes widened. You can't. Benjamin cut him off. Watch us. Emily moved closer to the monitors, her fingers hovering over a keyboard, confirming the upload. The screens flickered, and one by one, the cameras showed the entire hotel, the empty corridors, the hidden rooms, the clues they had followed. Every secret, every manipulation, every experiment was now exposed. The scientist lunged toward them, desperate, but Benjamin was ready. Using his instincts and training, he disarmed the man with precise, controlled movements. The fight was brief, efficient, and merciless. When it was over, the man lay restrained, the room finally silent except for the faint hum of machines. Benjamin turned to Emily. It's done. Emily exhaled, a mixture of relief and lingering fear. For now, she said softly. He nodded. We've uncovered the truth, exposed the lies, and stopped him. But this hotel, it will always hold shadows. She smiled faintly. Then we leave the shadows behind. Together, they ascended the stairs, leaving the hidden lab and its secrets behind. The Winterfall Hotel loomed above them, dark and silent, yet somehow less menacing now. They stepped into the night, the first light of dawn touching the skyline, painting the city in soft gold. Benjamin adjusted his coat, his gaze steady. Emily, he said, whatever comes next, you'll face it free. And I'll be here to make sure the past doesn't catch up. Emily looked at him, gratitude and determination shining in her eyes. Thank you, Benjamin. For seeing the truth when no one else could. They walked out into the city, two figures bound by shared trials, secrets, and survival. Behind them, the Winterfall Hotel faded into the background, a place of darkness, lies, and manipulation, now powerless against the light of exposure and the strength of those who refused to be broken. Benjamin Hard knew one thing: the case was closed, the truth revealed, but the world remained full of shadows, and he would always be ready to confront them. And somewhere, in the distance, the faintest echo of piano music played, a reminder that even in darkness, the melody of truth could be heard.